Case number 2 from the Denko-roku. The first ancestor was Mahakashapa. Once the world-honored one held up a flower and blinked. Kashapa smiled. The world-honored one said, "I have the treasury of the eye of the true Dharma and the wondrous mind of nirvana, and I transmit it to Mahakashapa." So, good afternoon. Saturday afternoon, hanging in there. Everybody working hard. It feels very strong. And yeah, it just feels like a very auspicious day in a lot of ways. We started out with Fusatsu, so renewing the precepts. And we're in the midst of the preparations for Choa's preceptorship and transmission. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I will talk a little bit about that for sure. But I wanted to start with the case. So a few weeks ago, and I'm sure all of you were not there, but could you picture Roxy? Help him. There you go. Perfect, Aiga. I talked about the Denko-roku written by Keizan Zenji because I was just thinking about Keizan Zenji a lot. Shoyu and I and Choa were in Japan at the 700th anniversary of the passing of Keizan Zenji, considered to be the mother of Soto Zen. So thinking about that a lot and wanting to share that with you all, some of our experiences. And so I mentioned in that talk that the Denko-roku, which the translation is the transmission, the record of the transmission of the light, the record of the transmission of the light. And so it's considered to be a spiritual genealogy that goes back to the Buddha. And apparently, in my reading about it, and I might be repeating myself a little bit, but just in case you didn't hear it before, Keizan was very concerned about demonstrating that the lineage of Soto Zen went all the way back to the Buddha. So part of his motivation in doing this spiritual genealogy was to show that the start of the lineage started with Shakyamuni Buddha and came forward through Dogen, and then 3 generations later to him. So that is what the Denko-roku is I believe 53 cases from the Buddha on forward of the transmission of the light. So I want you to read you a couple of things that Keizan says. So these the Denko-roku is talks that Keizan Zenji gave on every transmission. So it's a compilation of talks. So he's talking to the monks in his monastery, and he's saying, "Monks, do not yearn for the antiquity of 2,000 years ago." Now this is in the 1200s that he's saying this. "If you just urgently practice the way today, Kashapa has not entered Mount Gudaputra, and can appear in Japan, and can appear in National City. Shakyamuni's fleshy body will be warm right now, and Kashapa's smile will be new again. If you can reach this place, then you will be a successor to Kashapa, and Kashapa will receive the true Dharma from you." So this this I was recalling very early on in practice for me, I was in Salt Lake City and we were practicing with Genpo Merzel, and as sent out by Maizumi Roshi, kind of fielded out for our little group in Salt Lake City. And I remember hearing about transmission for the first time, and I thought, what can be transmitted? And I remember asking Genpo about that, and he said, it's just a confirmation. It's just a confirmation. So Buddha, Gautama, then becoming Shakyamuni Buddha, confirmed himself to himself. And that's the experience we understand that he had under the Bodhi tree on the 8th, with the morning, with the, what's that star called?
Venus morning star.
Anyway, you know what I'm saying. In the early morning of the 8th of December, after arduous practice like we do, with our backs hurting and our minds hurting and our emotions hurting, and going through all kinds of turmoil, having Mara come down and show him his family being destroyed and armies taking over his land, and then beautiful dancing girls and all the possible kinds of distractions that we all experience. And then staying with it, like we're staying with it right now. And having that deep longing to confirm what this life is about. What is this life? What is this life? And from what we understand, that's what the Buddha discovered for himself. That's what they discovered for themselves. So in this case, is the first transmission, the mind seal, the transmission from one apparent human to the other. And the Buddha, the world-honored one, holds up a flower and blinks. This is very interesting to think about, this holding up the flower and blinking. And Kashyapa smiles. So there's an obvious confirmation there that Kashyapa sees what the Buddha sees. Kashyapa understands what the Buddha understands and smiles. And then the Buddha does that confirmation. You know, I have the true treasury of the eye of the true Dharma and the wondrous mind of Nirvana, and I transmit it to Kashyapa. He doesn't give anything to Kashyapa. Just says, you get it. You get it, this whole life. And what did the Buddha say when he had his realization? I, all sentient beings, and the great earth simultaneously attain the way. Simultaneously, all together. We had a conversation about being the Bodhisattva earlier this morning, and feels in a way like it could be self-sacrificing, but if everything is all together, it's always realization all together. So I want to kind of segue from the case, because obviously I'm bringing it up for a reason, and why I thought of it earlier in the week is about the preceptorship and the transmission that's happening here, literally, in the process of, and will be the culmination of which will be this evening. So I want to make sure everybody kind of knows what's happening. And I'll just start with a few definitional things, because I know our sitting group in Idlewild, they're like, what does that mean and who's what and all that. So for most of you, this is going to be redundant, but not everybody necessarily. So there's two ceremonies that are going to happen this evening. And one is being authorized or empowered as a preceptor. And so that process is Seisen authorizing Choa to bestow the precepts on others that would want to receive them. And so that's the first ceremony that's going to happen. And then the second ceremony is the actual transmission in terms of, so Choa, if all goes well, as of probably about 8:30 this evening, will be Choa Sensei. And so sensei literally means one who has gone before. And Roshi means venerable one. And usually that title is bestowed on someone who's older. And there's actually I'm not exactly sure exactly what it is, but there's a criteria in White Plum, and I believe it's like the attainment of a certain age, as well as a certain length of time in practice. So you're not green as a teacher to be bestowed with the title of Roshi. So given his age, Choa will be a sensei for a good long time, which is great for us and great for Sweetwater. And I did, I think I mentioned it, I can't remember. I think I mentioned it in council that, we are those of us who have been around for a while and watched people go through these processes. There can be an emphasis on the verticality of it. So, for example, I'm a Dharma holder, which means I'm authorized as a teacher under the auspices of my teacher, who's Seisen. Choa is being authorized as a fully transmitted, independent Zen teacher. So he operates not under the auspices of Seisen anymore, but on his own auspices. I don't know if that's a word, but anyway, you know what I mean. Now, Seisen is still the abbot of Sweetwater Zen Center, but when, I think it's planned for when she leaves her abbotship and authorizes Choa to be the abbot, he'll be the abbot here as well. But those two things are independent of one another. And then I mentioned Roshi is generally somebody who's seasoned as a teacher and then relatively chronologically seasoned as well. So we all are holding the energy of this whole process right now. We're the container in which this is happening. We're all the container in which this is happening. It's monumental in the sense that, so Seisen has two previous successors. So the first successor is Herb or Echo, and most of you would be familiar of knowing who that is. Many of you, I don't know, probably a few of you anyway, don't know Kokyo. Kokyo's Swiss, and she's Swiss German, and she lives in Switzerland, and that's where her center is. And she is the abbotess of her center, and I believe that Seisen did confer Roshi on her when she did that ascending the mountain ceremony too. So and she's relatively young. She's probably in her mid-50s now. Known her for a long time, since she came to start practicing at Mount Center 25 years ago or so. Known both of them the whole time. So Choa will be Seisen's third successor. And one of the things that one does in that transmission ceremony, the most important thing you do, in a way, is you vow to continue the lineage. It's a big responsibility. I've heard it identified as a noose that you put around your neck, because you promise not to let the lineage die out with you. And that's a big promise. You promise to bring successors along. So it's a big commitment to the practice, obviously, and it's a big commitment specifically to the lineage. And that is the commitment that Choa is making. So it's something that like I said, it looks on the surface like, oh, this person now is more prestigious or something. It's actually, they've just really signed themselves up for good, for who knows how much eonic time. So it's admirable, very admirable thing. And I'm sure, just, I know Susan for a little bit of time, like 40 years. I'm sure it's a great relief for her as well. It's very satisfying. It must be very satisfying to have a student come to that point where you have confidence. It's going to make me cry. You have that kind of confidence in them that they can carry on. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot. It's got to take a lot to bring somebody along to that point. So it's a celebration for both of them and for all of us. And it really can't be emphasized enough how precious that is, and auspicious and rare, because as we all know, whether you've been here for a few days at this point or years and years and years, it takes a lot of fortitude to stick with this. I think it becomes choiceless at a certain point. And I don't mean to become a sensei, I mean to stick with practice, to stick with this draw. We have to really understand what our life is and what this life is and what this light is, and really confirm that this life is exactly what my life is. None other. No other place, no other time, nothing that anybody has to give us. It is our birthright. And the process is just about uncovering and discovery. And that's what one ancestor, and we know there were plenty of women in there, one ancestress, one ancestor after another confirmed that for themselves. And they could only have that transmission if they knew for themselves for sure, I am whole and complete as I am. This is nothing but wholeness and completeness as it is. Nothing else. And everything. So Kazan went on to say, I love this, daily. So the way the Denko Roku is set up, there's the case and there's the teisho. And teisho is not like I'm giving a Dharma talk. The definition of teisho is expounding the Dharma. So you're not talking about something, you're just, Dharma's coming out. So the construct of the Denko Roku is there's the case, there's the teisho, and then at the end, Kazan does a little verse. And it's very nice the way he says it. I'll read it to you at the end. Daily, this is part of the teisho. Daily, the old fellow Shakyamuni and you walk about, stand in place, sit and lie down together, and you have words together without even a moment of separation. If in this life you do not become acquainted with the old fellow, then you will be thoroughly undutiful. That's a big, strong jab. Undutiful to who? Since you are the Buddha's children, then if you are undutiful, not even the hands of 1,000 Buddhas will help you. So what comes up in not even the hands of 1,000 Buddhas can help you. I think I haven't mentioned this in a long time, but I think it was in 2010 on Mount Everest. It was a disastrous season on the mountain. And two very famous climbers and guides died. One of whom died on Everest, frozen because he couldn't get back down, having called his wife on the satellite phone, who was 7 months pregnant, I think in New Zealand or Australia, to say goodbye to her. And how he ended up in that situation was people were paying $60,000 a piece to climb Everest, and he did not respect his turnaround time. And he tried to get this person up to the top. And there was also a Sherpa who died literally, I think it's called short roping, trying to haul this woman up to the top of the mountain. So the reason I bring that up is it's a very dramatic example of nobody hauls us up to the peak. Nobody hauls us up to the peak. So not even the hands of 1,000 Buddhas can help us. There is a tremendous amount of responsibility in clarifying the basis of our life for ourselves. And we have tons of support. We have teachers, we have Sangha, we have the Dharma. But ultimately, we clarify that for ourselves and we satisfy ourselves. It's not about Seizen's approval. It's not about anybody else's approval. It's about making it for sure for ourselves. A couple other things from the Teisho. Master Dogen says Shakyamuni and Mahakashapa became acquainted and their life pulses intermingled. The Buddha held up a flower and Mahakashapa smiled. The Buddha offers each of us a flower. How do you respond? How do we respond? So the verse Keizon's verse at the end, he kind of always says it in one form or another this way. It's very sweet. Today, this descendant of Daijo Monastery would like to say a few humble words to point to this principle. Do you want to hear them? He always says that. Do you want to hear it? So this is his summation of the case. Know that in a remote place, in a cloud-covered valley, there is still a sacred pine that passes through the chill of the ages. So I just want to finish by encouraging us all. There's just this afternoon and this evening and one sitting period in the morning and then council to really, it's always what's said at this point in session. Really stick with it, all the energy that we've built up. Appreciate yourself for being here, appreciate all the challenges we go through. And also that your presence is really valuable to everybody else. And it's really meaningful that you're here. You, every one of you, and me. We, as Maizumi Roshi would say a lot, I can't do this practice without you. And so we're super fortunate to have one another. And this evening, there will be a couple of us out of the Zendo because we are supporting, we have a role to play in the ceremony. So Please forgive us for that and keep going. And at the very end, everyone will be invited into the hall. There will be the inevitable, we are a Japanese lineage, so there will be a picture at the end. It's unavoidable, seemingly. So everybody will be invited to say congratulations and celebrate together. Cho's parents will be here, and her. So please know that when you're sitting in the Zendo this evening, you are holding the space for this very precious process to happen. It doesn't happen without all of us being together in it.